like that. Now, from doing some research in the archives, you were in a number of organizations in high school. The Girls League, Girls Athletic Association. You were the editor of Spotlight newspaper, and you were the treasurer of Masquers, which is they put on plays. So I guess we'll start off with Girls Club, which from what I understand, it was kind of like a community service type of thing, no?
GAA, Girls Athletic Association.
Oh no, the Girls League.
Oh, I have no idea what that is.
Oh, really?
I've forgotten.
It said that they did things in the community, and your name was listed your senior year, so it looked like you were only in it for 1 year. We can move on to.
Let's do that. Remember that.
We can move on to the Girls Athletic Association.
Oh yes, that's a sad tale. In my day, in the 50s, when I was in high school, there was no such thing as girls athletics. There was a boys tennis team, a girls tennis team, basketball, name a sport. So the girls had to form a group. Who wanted to participate in athletics had to form a group and compete with each other. Well, we didn't do any extracurricular competition. So that's what the Girls Athletic Association was. It meant that we got the gym, I think, 1 day a week, whether the basketball players wanted it or not, to play basketball or badminton.
Whatever sport you guys wanted.
Whatever sport we were interested in.
What was it like for you being the editor of the Spotlight newspaper?
It was busy. It was basically a mimeographed newspaper, as I recall. And I think it came out every 2 weeks, so it wasn't like weekly pressure or heaven forfend daily. And it was just a kind of typical editorial job, assigning stories to different people. The newspaper was published by the senior class, so you didn't get to work on it until you were a senior. We didn't break any, scandalous stories or anything.
No, basic reportage.
Yeah.
Now, did you pursue that? That's a pretty good thing to have on your resume. Did you decide to pursue any other editorial positions? Or
I did for volunteer organizations later in my life. I was the newsletter editor for the League of Women Voters when it first started in Macomb. And I did have a kind of umbrella editorial business of my own in Columbia, Missouri, and then carried over here to Macomb until Ronald Reagan put the kibosh on any small business, so I had to give it up. Excuse me.
The Masquers, what was that exactly?
I think most schools have thespian clubs. It's the equivalent. There was some reason, maybe because we were a state high school instead of a local high school, that we could not be affiliated with thespians, so we had Masquers. That was probably the most important influence on my life from high school. I did eventually go on to get an M.F.A. in theater, and I actually made a living doing theater for a year. That was enough.
And you're still involved in the community, putting on plays.
Right.
There's a play tonight, you
Right.
said?
Mm-hmm.
That's really interesting. What's that?
It's a typical community theater play. It's by Pat Cook, who who writes exclusively for community theaters, and it's light. It's a comedy mystery, clever play, clever dialogue, interesting characters. It's called it's Murder in the Wings. Murder comedy. It's pretty good. Should come see it.
I will. I wish I didn't have a prior commitment. I would, because I actually found there's some pretty interesting stuff. I found you did a play, I think it said it was a few years back, maybe 2005 even, The Inadvertent Rascal.
Oh, no, that was last summer.
Okay.
Yeah. I was commissioned. I've written several plays. We used to have a summer play at Argyle State Park called the Argyle Heritage Theater, and I wrote several plays for that. It was plays based in local history. As a result of that, I was commissioned to do The Inadvertent Rascal, which is a play about the founder of Vishnu Springs. Are you familiar with Vishnu Springs?
It sounds familiar.
It was a resort hotel in the early 20th century out by Colchester. And the man who started it had led a pretty eventful life. So when I think it was Heritage Days, celebrated Vishnu, I was asked to write a play about that. And it was a Reader's Theater play, and 6 community people were involved in presenting it. It was well received.
And that was one that you actually wrote.
Yeah.
Very cool. What is your role in the one tonight?
Oh, I play a flamboyant actress turned caterer. Much different from the retiring person that you see before you.
Let's see. Now, I did have a question about because looking through the yearbooks, I saw all the different clubs in school, and one that stuck out to me was the Future Homemakers of America. And
I don't think I was in that one.
No, you weren't in that one. And I was just wondering, because I know how it is, having recently been in high school a couple of years back, I realized that it's very cliquish and everybody's kind of fragmented. So what I was wondering was there a stark contrast between the girls in the Athletic Association and the girls in the Future Homemakers of America? Were there any stigmas between them?
No. You have to understand that the lab school classes were fewer than 50 people each.
Okay.
Which meant that everybody kind of did everything. So there was a lot of cross membership in things. Example, I was in the Girls Athletic Association and Masquers. And probably some other stuff too. Well, yeah, the Girls League. Hey, Rusty. This is Rusty.
Yes. Is it a calico?
No, he's just an ordinary cat. And spoiled. He thinks it's time for his dinner. Or he came out to see what was going on.
Hi.
What I started to say, with 48 people in the class, it's kind of hard to have cliques. There was perhaps a little bit of division between the students who had started Northwestern High School, Western Lab School, in pre-kindergarten as 4-year-olds, and had gone all the way through high school because they'd been a group for, well, actually through 8th grade. And then when we started high school, the Northwestern District was having some problems, and several of the parents petitioned it. He's not usually that friendly. Petitioned to bring in, I can't remember, I think 22 students from the Northwestern High School District. So while there was no friction, there wasn't the immediate cohesion that there was among the original group. Actually, I came in 4th grade, and I sometimes felt like an outsider. It wasn't any intentional snubbing. It was just that group was like a family. They'd been together for 10 years. And we were all terrible snobs. I think that goes with being a lab school. We just assumed we were better than everybody else. We did have more advantages. That part is true. When I was in high school, if I had wanted to take a 3rd year of Latin, I could have taken it through the university, even though the high school only offered 2 years. I could have taken my 3rd year as a university course. Or there were people who did that in math, literature, sciences. So we did have advantages. Also, the lab school, you understand that the lab school was set up to give teacher education majors at the university a place to practice teach.
Yeah. In a couple of the rooms at Simpkins, we saw how they would observe.
Right. Yeah, I think almost all of the grade school rooms have that little.
Yeah, the painter.
That you can raise up, and the people in the next room can watch and take assiduous notes, I'm sure. But we also had practice teachers, and we all felt it was our job to give them as hard a time as possible. So we were pretty spoiled.
Is there any particular story that stands out in your mind about a hard time that you gave a stand-in teacher?
No, I'm not sure I would admit it if I did remember. I do remember we had forgive me, Waldo Horriban. He was a principal, and he also taught chemistry and physics. We had a student teacher who was excellent, an excellent, excellent teacher. I think it was in physics. And she was a straight A student, and the whole class just loved her, which was very rare for a student teacher. But she was really good at explaining and demonstrating, and we found out after she had finished her quarter with us that Mr. Horriban, aptly named, had given her a B for student teaching. And we thought that was unfair. And we thought, and it may have been true, but we thought it was because she would have been the first person to graduate with a major in physics with a straight A average, except for Mr. Horriban himself. And my class tended to be kind of in the forefront of the protest movement. I mean, this was in 1957, 58, and we marched on the physics department and insisted that this was a bum deal that this teacher got, and we kind of pressured him to change the grade to an A. I think they did.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. That's awesome. So it was a pretty lively campus then, huh?
Well, I came from a pretty lively class, yeah.
That's very interesting. I kind of, we had a couple of people from the lab school come and speak to us a little bit, and they were kind of running through all the professors that the buildings are named off.
Oh, yeah.
And I was wondering if there's any stories that you have about the professors, or some of them were deans, or the different buildings that are so prominent now. If you had any stories related to the people they were named after.
Well, let me run through them. Simpkins was dead and gone, I think, before I was ever there. And that building was named Simpkins after it became the home for the English and ROTC. A lovely combination, English, ROTC, and theater departments in that building. Horriban Hall, of course, the new lab school was named for the longtime principal of the lab school. He was a pompous old bird. What else do we have?
There's Morgan.
Morgan was long gone. I think he was a president. He was long gone by the time I got there too.
There's Canabla.
Canabla he was the president of the university. Interesting, strange man. He was a cat lover. And the president's office used to be where I think the provost's office is now. It has a balcony out in the front of Sherman Hall.
Mm-hmm.
And Canabla was it Canabla? No, that was Frank Bew. I'm telling you about Frank Bew. He used to stand on the balcony and shoot at stray dogs on the campus.
Really?
Yes, because he did not like dogs. He had cats. He was also instrumental in the scandal involving the athletes who were. This was before NCAA regulations, and perhaps some of the athletes on campus were not as literate as they might have been, but they were very good at playing football or basketball, and sometimes stealing silverware. I think there were a bunch of basketball players that were arrested for stealing silverware that they picked up from the coach's house. That's the coffee pot going off. Yeah, that was Bew. Knobloch was vindictive. Knobloch was president while the Vietnam War was going on. I'm thinking. You're going to have to look all this stuff up because I may be making it up out of whole cloth. I know that there was a upset about the student newspaper, the Courier, and the president insisted that the editor be fired, and so she and some of the staff went outside the university and started their own newspaper called Freedom Rider. You might be interested in looking. They're all up in the archives. So we had it. There was no Courier for that time. There was the Freedom Rider, which was a pretty strongly liberally oriented newspaper, and then there was another, I can't remember, another off-campus newspaper. I think the Newman Club may have started that. But yeah, the Freedom Ride is pretty interesting. You can go look that up in the archives too. Oh, Salee Hall, windowless building, named for a biology professor who could not stand being indoors. I think he taught botany, and he held his classes outdoors until it was just absolutely too cold for anyone to go around looking at tree bark and dead leaves. And so when they built the windowless building, what did they name it? Salee Hall. And my understanding is that Dr. Salee's wife was invited to come to the dedication of the building, and she said, "No, thank you." How inappropriate.
That's funny.
That's a good story.
Let's see, there's also,
Let's see, Wetzel. Stipes, I don't know anything about Stipes. Wetzel was the chair of the Industrial Arts Department, which is now, I think, IT&T, Industrial and Technology. Whatever it is in Canabla.
Okay.
He was also mayor of Macomb, and he was also an architect and built many of the houses around in Macomb. Are you familiar with the Insel House, the bed and breakfast on the corner of Pierce? And it's just a block east of West Pierce Liquors.
Yeah.
That one, the one catty corner from that, actually the house that I just moved out of on Murray Street was a Wetzel house. It was the house that he built for himself. Quite a few, and they're pretty distinctive. They generally have an arc over the porch, and many of them have towers. But yeah, there is a movement afoot in town to do some kind of recognition to the houses that he built. So that's kind of interesting about Wetzel. Henninger, I don't know. Bayless, I don't know. Grody is no longer with us. Washington and Lincoln are obviously not named after.
Yeah.
They were the first high-rise dorms. Did you know that?
Before
Higgins
Thompson and Higgins?
Mm-hmm. Thompson and Higgins, when they were built, I'm not going to remember his name, the fire chief in Macomb took a look at them and said, "I don't know how to fight fires in a tall building like that." And so he sat down and figured out a way that would work for it. And that method was adapted by fire departments all over the country.
Wow.
For fighting fires in high-rises. They have since, with advanced technology, it's no longer in use. And that's kind of an interesting fact about Western and Macomb.
Yeah. I had no idea. I thought this might be fun. In the 1956 sequel yearbook, there was a class will section. I found throughout the yearbooks there was always a class will section, and a girl named Carol DeHaven,
yeah,
willed her athletic abilities to you.
I'd forgotten that too. All the way through grade school and actually into high school, I lived on the corner of Calhoun and Clay, across from where the Lutheran Student Center is. Now the building is the house has been torn down since then. But there were a number of us who lived on Clay Street, and we would get together when we were little younger kids. We'd get together and play kick the can or hide and seek or whatever, and we just kind of stuck together. That is one of those cliques you're talking about, based on proximity. Carol DeHaven was one of the people that lived on that street. I don't remember what the circumstances were now, but I think neither one of us were really super athletes.
That's funny.
Actually, I was quite a good tennis player, but no girl sports. None at Knox when I got there either. So.
Oh, you went to Knox?
Mm-hmm.
Was there a lot of people from the school that went to Knox?
No, I think there was another member of the Clay Street gang, Bruce Jackson, who graduated a year ahead of me, was at Knox while I was there. I think that was all.
Now, from what I understand, the lab school, most of the students that attended, they had parents that were employed by the university?
Not necessarily. The lab school, as I said earlier, was a state high school. They could not deny admission to anybody in the state who applied if there was room for them, and their name came up on the list. There was often a waiting list for classes. So faculty people who came into the university would generally put their names on the student, their children's names on the waiting list because of the just physical advantages. And then too, all of the teachers in the lab school were adjunct faculty for the university, so they all had at least master's degrees. We had several teachers who had PhDs or EDDs as well. So it really was a very good school. I don't want to put it down. I got a very good education there. So yeah, some of the maybe the bulk of the students. But my father was a dry cleaner. He didn't have anything to do with the university except keeping it clean.
It just escaped me. Did you take any classes beyond the high school? Like you said that you could take a third year of Latin if you wish. Did you take any of those classes?
No, I never did.
Did you have a lot of friends that did?
There weren't a whole lot of people that did. I did have a friend who did take a third year of Latin because he was planning to go to law school, and he thought that would be useful to him. There was one person in my class who took advanced math classes, and that's all I remember, but it was possible.
Was it, for most of the students, once you got up into your high school years, was it a pretty standard curriculum for every student, or did you have a lot of options?
We had a lot of options.
Did you take writing classes? Were there classes where you would put on plays?
Actually, the plays were generally done class by class. So you'd have the junior class play, senior class play. We did do some other one act sometimes that were, I think, usually sponsored by the Masquers. Trying to think what all we did. And then in the spring we do a play for the Illinois Speech Association contests. So we usually send a one act to that. And that would be just open to, any of the plays were open to anybody in the high school that could come. It wasn't limited to the Masquers.
So then you took some writing classes too?
I did my junior year, my sophomore year. My sophomore year, I skipped sophomore English and did a reading and writing independent study class. I'm not quite sure why I did that, but it was cool.
It sounds cool. Definitely. And what did you major in college?
I started out in theater and then switched to English with a minor in French. Went on to get a master's degree in English, and then my M.F.A. in theater. In the meantime, I taught 1 year high school French and English, junior and senior English at Northwestern High School in Scioto, Illinois, which is just north of here, 15 miles probably.
And is that, you said that Northwestern, right, got put into the school, that the schools combined?
Oh,
a different Northwestern?
no,
here?
that was the same district, but it was at that time Northwestern as a district didn't exist. There was a high school in Good Hope and a high school in Blandonsville, and they were both very small and not really enough students to sustain them. And it got to be kind of a Hatfield and McCoy's thing, and there were people in each town that realized that the sensible thing to do would be consolidate. But there were also those who said, no, we've never done that. And so some concerned parents enrolled their students at Western High so they wouldn't be, so they'd have more advantages than either one of these little bitty schools. So yeah, it became the same district, but
okay. And you said that you started going to the school when you were in fourth grade? And where did you go before that?
I lived in Canton. I was born in Canton.
Okay. Is that Canton nearby? Or
yeah,
okay.
It's 40 minutes east of here.
Okay.
Where are you from?
I am from Carroll Stream, Illinois.
Okay. I know where that is.
Do you?
Yes. I can almost tell you the name of the high school. Give me the first letter of the name of your high school.
G?
It's not George Stagg. Okay, I give up.
Glenbard North?
Oh, of course.
Yeah, that's the one in Carroll Stream. I actually didn't go to that one because the way the districts got changed, and I had to go to West Chicago Community High School, even though there were two high schools right by my house. I had to drive 20 minutes instead of 2 or 5.
That was crazy.
Yeah. I'm surprised not many people know. When I say Carroll Stream, they don't recognize the name.
Before I retired from Western, I was an advisor in the academic services program, and I spent most of my days on the telephone, much of it talking to high school counselors. So I'm pretty familiar with the high schools in the Chicago area and downstate as well.
Very interesting. So, how many plays would you say you've had a role in, whether it was writing or acting? You've acted in quite a few then?
Yeah, I can't even begin to tell you. I don't keep track. if you were a little older and I were not so indiscreet, I would say I make it a point never to count things.
Do you think you could, did you have more years where you were more active than other years?
Yeah. Shortly after I finished my M.F.A., and I can't tell you what year that was, 82, I think. I did quite a lot of work in theater. Stage managing, directing, not so much acting. I did, if you get out to see the community theater play, you'll see I did play Alfred E. Newman in a Illinois State Theater Touring Company production of The Mad Show. Right here.
What's your favorite role in plays? Do you really like directing, or do you like writing them?
My MFA is in directing.
Okay.
And I do like directing. Since I've been retired, I've been doing more writing, and that's satisfying too in a different way.
Mm-hmm. That's very cool. I'm a creative writing minor.
Oh yeah?
Yeah,
that's
and
great.
a creative writing and professional writing minor, and I hope to get my MFA in nonfiction, so I can definitely appreciate the writing aspect. And directing must be fun. You get to be personable. And
God. To tell people where to go and what to do.
That's, yeah. In the writing aspect of your playwriting, what was like a big literary, what's the word? Well, I mean, what works had a big impact on your writing? What stories do you value a lot?
When I was writing for the Argyle Heritage Theater, I really enjoyed researching them. I have a bookcase, one shelf of my bookcase in my library is full of women's diaries of the about 1820s to let's see, what was the latest one? Around 1900, I think. So I really enjoyed researching the diaries just to find out what life was like, and then trying to replicate that on stage to give people a sense of what people's concerns were, what they had and what they didn't have, how they made do. So I guess that would be my greatest literary influence as a playwright. For the Inadvertent Rascal, I was fortunate that one of the archivists, I think she's retired now, from the library, Marla Bisdall, had done a lot of research in the local papers about this man, and I was able to use a lot of her research. Otherwise, I would not have gotten it done, because it was about this time of year that I was approached to do it, and I was in a show at the community theater at the same time, and I knew I wouldn't get to start on it until after the show went up. And so the fact that the research was done saved me a lot of time, and I was able to complete it by summer for the Heritage Day celebration.
If you had to say what your personal favorite play is that you've written or directed, one that has a special place in your heart, what would you say?
Well, I'll be sentimental about it and say my husband and I played Dr. and Mrs. Gibbs in our town at the community theater, and it was just such joy working with him.
That would be great. So, more than any particular works, is it like a time period that really interests you? Like you said, the 1820s to about 1900. Is that a time period that really?
That was the time period that we covered in the plays at the Argyle Theater, and then about 1890 to I can't remember when he died, 1910, 1915 maybe, was the Inadvertent Rascal. I'm working on a play right now that is different than anything I've ever done. It's more Pinter-esque. I started it last summer. I went on a writer's retreat to Greek island of Alonissus in the Aegean Sea. That was lovely. And I had a lot of writing done. And I'm going back this summer, too.
Make that a yearly thing.
As long as I can bypass Athens. Athens was, last year, I can't even imagine what it's like now. Last year was so sad. It was, everyone was so depressed. And the city was dirty, and there was graffiti all over. The little group that I was traveling with, the four of us, one of the women had her backpack pickpocketed, lost all of her money and her cards and everything in Athens. So this year I'm looking for a way to get to Alonissus without having to stay in Athens for a night.
Is there now what exactly? Darius Hicks is the name of the Inadvertent Rascal, right? What is there something like an attribute about that character that, like, is there a common thread between the characters that you write and are interested in?
Yeah, I think so. I think a lot of them are dreamers.
Yeah.
And just keep plugging away against all odds at fulfilling their dreams. I had never thought of that, but thank you. Yes, I think that's, thinking back on the plays that I've written, that's the common thread.
That's great. What is his story?
Oh
specifically?
My! Well, he had this vision of the resort, the hotel at Vishnu, and he had horse racing track. He had walks built through the woods with swings and hammocks, I think. He made it a very desirable place to go. And the water in the springs, of course, was supposed to be medicinal. I mean, they always are. He married married three times. This is what everybody likes about him, because of the scandal. His first wife came to partake of the waters of the spring, and they fell in love and married. They had 3 children. Then she died, and he married a widow who had 2 children of her own. No, the first wife didn't die. She ran off, which was unheard of at the time. She ran off, took her 2 daughters with her. He divorced her, and then he married a widow with 2 children. a daughter who was, I think, 11, and a son who was 7. His second wife was sickly, and eventually the waters did not heal her, and she died. His stepdaughter at that time was 19, and he married his stepdaughter, shades of Woody Allen. And that was a big scandal in McDonough County, because he was a prominent citizen of the county. Everybody knew Darius Hicks. So he married his stepdaughter, and I think she died in childbirth. And he had a housekeeper who taking care of their children. There were 2 children, a boy and a girl. And the housekeeper came up pregnant and claimed Hicks was the father. And he couldn't face the scandal and shot himself. But I managed to question the fact that he was the father of Mrs. Dara's child. So in my play, he's not the father.
Is that something that really drew you to playwriting, is being able to enact something historical and still being able to twist it in the direction that you want, whether it's true or not?
I don't know. Maybe so. I never thought of that either. I'm sure glad I'm talking to you.
I'm glad I'm talking to you.
No, I don't know. Doing the Argyle Theater was just great fun. We were sponsored by the Illinois Arts Council and the Illinois Humanities Council, and so there had to be historical content for the Humanities Council. I loved researching. I'm a terrible eavesdropper, and reading diaries is kind of like eavesdropping on paper.
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed reading the diaries and then picking things out of them and putting them together that fit the county history and how the county was settled. This county was settled half by Scots-Irish hillbillies from Kentucky who came up the river and stopped here, and half by Easterners who were looking for cheap land and came, because this is a military tract. So one of the plays, I think it's called The Yankee Neighbors, one of the plays that I wrote is about the conflict between the uppity Yankees and the hillbillies. But everything happened happily in the end. So, an interesting thing about the Argyle Theater was just talking this with my son the other day. We did one play. I didn't write it, but I directed it, called The Conflict, which was a civil war, about how the war affected people in McDonough County. And the premise was a man comes home from the Civil War, his 16-year-old son wants to go back with him, and the mother says, "No, you can't leave me here, I need your help." But when the husband comes home from the war, he comes up over the hill at Argyle carrying a long rifle. We were doing the show one night, and a bunch of motorcyclists came roaring into the park and somehow found their way over to the cabin where we always did the plays. And they were rowdy, talking, drinking beer. And we just kept going. And there was one fellow who had a little boy with him. I'd say probably 10, 11 years old. And the other guys got ready to go, and they said, come on, Rafe, it's time, let's get out of here. He says, hold it, I'm watching this movie, it's about guns. So, obviously he'd never seen a play before. And he soon watched it until they put the gun away and left. Watching this movie.
So for a while you had McDonough's chapter of the Hells Angels watching the play. That's funny.
Oh, you kind of gotten away from the lab school.
Yeah, that's okay though. I'm alright with that.
Okay.
This is far more interesting to me. But I suppose maybe we should get back to it a little bit. Is there one particular teacher that you think influenced you in a big way from the lab school?
A couple. One was Frank Harnish, who was my English and speech and theater teacher. Really encouraged me to go on in theater. He was a young teacher at that time, probably shortly out of college. He had well, let's see, how old would I was 13. I was a freshman. Jane would have been 6. So he had a 6-year-old son. So he was old enough to have a 6-year-old son. Helen Buckley was also an English teacher. Isabel Hoover, she was so old, she looked like her feet were on backward. You know how old ladies' ankles get swollen and turn toward themselves. And she carried an enormous ring of keys on her belt, so she huddled down the hallway, and you could hear her coming with the jingling of the keys. Now, when I started teaching English at Western, I was working on my M.A. in theater. That was before they instituted the M.F.A. And I had to take a year off to make some money, because I was raising 2 boys on my own. So I was secretary in the art department, and the English department called me and said, please, 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 school starts Monday, this is Friday, come teach composition for us. So it's more money than being the secretary.
Yeah.
So I did, and one of my classes was in the what was the English classroom when it was a high school. And I swear when I walked in that door to teach my first class, I heard Isabel's keys jangling. She was an old-fashioned teacher, and she taught sentence diagramming. Have you ever had to do that?
No. I don't believe I have.
Well, you would know if you had. It was a way of outlining a sentence so that you knew what modified what, so you didn't have dangling modifiers and things like that. It was kind of mapping out the sentence. Everyone hated it. Almost everyone hated it. I thought it was kind of fun. It was kind of like a puzzle. But yeah, she was a very old-fashioned teacher, and I think I learned a lot from her, and Helen and Frank as well. So those would be my 3 most influential teachers. Oh, and Rupert Wells, when I was in 8th grade, he was a math teacher. Excellent math teacher. I am so good at math, and I'm a right brain person. So I'm not supposed to be good at math. But he was just an excellent teacher. I had him for 8th grade algebra. Really glad I did, because there's very little math up to calculus. I remember calculus that I can't handle pretty well. So those were teachers that influenced me. I had a teacher in 8th grade science that was my mother's PE teacher when she was in high school. That was curious. That was in Canton.
So your family has a long lineage in the area?
Yeah. My parents were from Fulton County. Their parents congregated there. My grandparents were not necessarily born in Fulton County, but they all converged there.
Well, that's just about all I had, and much more than I had. So if there's anything else?
I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think if there's anything about the building that I can tell you. Where, let's see, ROTC is no longer in that building, is it? It's down in Horriban.
Yeah.
If you come in the lab school from Simpkins, from Sherman Hall, the building on the first door on the right was special education. The first door on the left was the nurse's office. Then the next door on the left, then you get the elevator in the men's room on the right. Next door on the left was the first grade teacher's office. And the next door on the left was kindergarten teacher's office, and then it was the kindergarten. Have you been in those rooms?
Yes.
With the squirrels and bunnies and things on the ceiling?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why.
That explains it.
Yeah, that was the kindergarten room and the first grade room, and they had access to the outdoors. There was a little patio outside each of them, and there was a restroom in the first and kindergarten and first grade. Lockers for the kids along the wall. I think the chickies and bunnies are significant. They're still there. The last door on the left was the teacher's lounge, and the last door on the right was the art room. And in the middle was the gym, before they built what is now the recital hall. That was the new gym that opened when I was in 5th grade. Before that, the two big rooms that are divided by a plastic divider were the gym.
Those are the theater rooms now, correct?
Yeah, movement rooms. The one on the west side was the cafeteria. And I swear, when I was taking movement classes in the theater department, that the floor still smelled like canned peaches. It may have just been my nose. Nostalgic tricks on me.
Yeah, just like the keys.
Yeah. Second floor was 2nd grade, 3rd grade, 4th grade, administrative offices, principal's office, and whatever. Administrative offices down there. 3rd floor, 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade. And then the top floor was the high school. And then where the writing center is, that was the study hall and the library. Where the writing center is was the library. The other side was the study hall.
Talking about the building made me remember that I was going to ask about the tunnel that goes from Simpkins to Sherman.
Yeah.
And from what I understand, it was put there and used in the 50s because of, the whole bomb situation that would be like a bomb shelter if they...
It was designated a bomb shelter in the 50s, but it was there from the time they built Simpkins Hall because the steam lines run from Sherman to Simpkins through the tunnel.
Okay.
When I was in grade school, I lived just across the street from where the Lutheran Student Center is on Calhoun Street. I think there are duplexes there now or something. But I would walk to school, and on cold days, I'd cut through Sherman Hall, go down to the tunnel, and come and go into Simpkins through the...
So you could actually use it back then.
Yeah.
And where exactly, this is what I've been wondering, is where does it come up in Simpkins?
If you come in again from Sherman Hall, and then the first stairwell that goes up, there's a door right here. That's the door to the tunnel.
So it comes up right under the stairs?
Right, right beside the stairs.
Okay. Very interesting. Well...
Actually, you can get down to the tunnel from Sherman. If you go down to the basement of Sherman and then just head west, it's blocked off, I think, but you can at least see how you get there from Sherman, the Sherman Hall side.
I've never been in the basement of Sherman.
You ought to get Rebecca to get permission from the campus cops and take the class through the tunnel. That would be fun.
Yeah, that'd be really cool. So it was just open, you could use it whenever you wanted. Very interesting.
I'll bet she could, given your project, I'll bet that she could get permission to go through there.
Yeah, I would really be interested in doing that. I might bring that up to her.
Yeah, I would.
And let's see, we can touch on this really quickly if you know anything about it, but there's the legend that Simpkins is haunted.
I don't know where that started circulating. Oh, probably in the late 60s.
Okay.
I had never heard it when I was in school.
I was recently looking for apartments around here for next year, and the woman who took me and my girlfriend around to apartments, she was, we were passing Simpkins, and she was just like, "Oh, did you know that Simpkins is haunted?" And we were like, "Oh yeah, we're English majors, we've heard that 100 times. And she goes, "Well, my dad is a janitor for WIU, and he worked in Simpkins for a long time, and apparently, I haven't checked to see if it's got any validity behind it, but apparently there was a story that sometime, it could have been in the late 60s or maybe the early 60s, I'm not exactly sure when, but that sounds about right, that a girl drowned in Lake Ruth right outside of Simpkins and Sherman.
Now that's a myth that goes back farther than
Really?
the 60s. Yeah. As far as I know, nobody's ever drowned in Lake Ruth.
This particular woman, she said that her dad, the janitor, saw a ghost of a girl in all around Simpkins all the time. And I mean, there's probably, I'm sure that some of these stories are exaggerated. I've heard that janitors have seen the girl and she asks for them to come play with her, but he said that he never tried talking to her, and she never spoke to him or anything. She just was around, and he said that it didn't bother him any. He would see her once in a while, and he'd be like, "Oh,
well, anything's possible." I don't want to step on anybody's.
Oh yeah. The only reason I don't believe in anything supernatural is because I've never had an experience of my own to really believe that it's there, but that's just me. But I have got to get going, but thank you very much. This is very interesting. I really appreciate it.
Glad to help you out.
And I will look into some things that we've talked about.